I shared this story at a meeting one time when I was speaking in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, not far from my house. Edward McClary was the only survivor. After I shared the story, a lady came to me after and she said, Mr. Hovind, my name is Val Bill. My stepson, Larry, was one of the kids who was eaten by that creature. She said, this story you are telling is exactly correct. That's what she said. There's her phone address if you want to write her, if you don't believe me. Down the river, down the bay from us, or down the beach from us, is Panama City, Florida, about 100 miles away. I was speaking down there, and a youth director came to me afterwards. He said, Brother Hovind, I'm a youth director at a Lutheran church. He said, my youth group was in the van driving across the bridge in Panama City, and we saw a creature just like that one you've got in your book down there. He said, the kids all saw it. Everybody saw it in the van, but they all said, man, if we tell anybody, they're going to think we're crazy. There have been many reports like this. Who knows how many have not been reported? I interviewed a lady who grew up in Panama, Central America. She said she was riding her horse along the ocean, on the Pacific Ocean, and she saw a plesiosaur. She's married to a pastor who's a Baptist pastor in Arkansas now. I interviewed her, been several winters ago. I have interviewed probably 80 people face-to-face who said, look, I've seen one. There have been 20,000 reported sightings in the last century. There have been reports of pterodactyls still alive. In Africa, they call it the Kangamato. In Kenya, they call it Batamzinga. That's their name for it. I was sitting in my office one time, and the phone rang, and this guy said, Mr. Hovind, my name is, they call him Steve. He said, my African name is real long, so they call him Steve. He said, I'm on the Kenya Olympic running team. I'm over here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm going to school at Louisiana State. He's graduated now and gone. I don't know what happened to him. He said, you mentioned in your seminar that I just saw that pterodactyls might still be alive. Here's one here on the table. There have been many reports of pterodactyls, and I mentioned this in my seminar. Steve said, Mr. Hovind, I'm from Kenya, and I want you to know we have those creatures in my village. He said, they're only about a 4-foot wingspan. He said, they've got a bump on the back of their head. He said, why do your schools in America say they lived millions of years ago? I said, because we're dumb over here. He said, they're very rarely seen, and most people in my village don't like them, and some people are superstitious about them, because their favorite food appears to be decaying human flesh. So if you bury somebody, you better bury them deep, or Kangamato will come dig them up and eat them. Frank Mellon, the African explorer, heard about rumors about an animal called the Kangamato, lived in the Jiundu swamps in the northwest corner of northern Rhodesia, near the Belgian Congo. He asked the natives what it was. They told him it was a bird, but not exactly a bird. More like a lizard with wings like a bat. The wings made of skin. He showed them pictures of pterodactyls, and all of them immediately plumped for the pterodactyl, excitedly muttering, Kangamato. A couple of cowboys apparently shot one back in 1880-something in Arizona, cut off the wingtips and took it back to the saloon and said, fellas, we just shot a giant bird with no feathers. Here's part of the wingtips. They had skin, not feathers. In Venezuela, a missionary told me that he's been down there for years, and the natives kept talking about an animal that they're afraid of, a giant bat. They were scared of this animal. He said it would capsize canoes and carry off Indians. I met with Adam in '98. He told me the Indians were terrified of this bat, and years ago they had sent their bravest men to the head of the river, where they killed one of the creatures years ago and buried it near the Mawada River. When Clint showed the Indians a picture of a pterodactyl, their eyes got big as saucers, and they said, that is the bat. They positively identified this extinct dinosaur as the bat that lived a few miles from their village. Even today, the Indians will not fish or drink from the river for fear of this creature. Missionary Tyson Hughes told Bill Gibbons, who wrote the book with me, that he knew of a creature in Seram, Indonesia, right here. But the locals called the creature the orang batai, which means man with wings. My next-door neighbor teaches English as a second language at Pensacola Junior College. She lets me come in and speak to her class about once every other year, so that I can share about dinosaurs and also get the gospel into them a little bit. So I was sharing about dinosaurs, and I shared this session in there. This is all adults learning English from other countries. This lady raised her hand. She said, Mr. Hovind, I am from Indonesia. I'm a medical doctor, and so is my husband. We came over here to study English. She said, you are right. We have those creatures in Indonesia. Why do your American schools say they lived millions of years ago? Several missionaries claim they've seen these. Of course, some have never seen them, and somebody who's never seen one is going to say they don't exist. Carl Baugh has been down to Papua New Guinea several times. The natives there call the creature the ropen. They say it looks just like the pterodactyl, but it glows in the dark just a little bit, like it has something bioluminescent on its skin. Several missionaries have said they saw this creature and it has a slight glow to it. Charlie Knight told me he saw one in Washington, near Spokane, Washington. Giant bird was seen off the coast of Alaska about a year ago. How many heard about that one? The 14-foot wingspan. A lot of folks on this airplane saw this thing flying right past the airplane. Not past it, but just flying in that region. And nobody knows for sure what it was yet. It hasn't been seen since, as far as I know. I have lots and lots of stuff on this topic. A couple of things real quick here. The Indians out west used to have a story about the thunderbird. They told all the settlers that came out, they said, oh, be careful of the thunderbird. It's a giant bird. They said, why do you call it the thunderbird? They said, oh, a Sioux Indian party years ago saw one get hit by lightning and fall to the ground. It took them 3 days to find it. When they found this thing, the buzzards had picked it clean, but it had a 20-foot wingspan and a bony bump on the back of its head. That's where the legend of the thunderbird came from, a pterodactyl. Here's a prayer stick in an Indian museum in Colorado, near Colorado Springs, and it shows the head of a pterodactyl. Henry Ford put an eagle on the taillight of his Thunderbird. It should have been a pterodactyl, Henry. The French explorers came down the Mississippi in 1675. They stopped off where today the town of Alton, Illinois is, right across from St. Louis, and they saw this strange animal painted on the cliffs by the Indians. They said, what is this big animal you painted up there? They said, oh, that's the piasaw bird. They said, what's a piasaw bird? They said, oh, a giant bird. Used to live up in the cliffs. He would swoop down and pick up Indians and carry them off. But a great chief prayed, and the Great Spirit showed him a way to kill this bird, and they finally killed this giant bird that terrorized our village. For years, they painted it up on the cliffs. When the white men took over the area, they kept the painting up there, kept painting the piasaw bird. They got tired of painting it, so one day they put up a big metal plaque. There's me underneath it. Huge metal plaque. Then they got afraid the plaque might fall, so they took it down in 1996. But if you go to Alton, Illinois today and look up Piasaw in the phone book, you'll see all sorts of people listed as Piasaw Dairy Queen and Piasaw Motors and stuff like that. The Piasaw legend is famous around that area. There's a Civil War photograph circulating around that claims to be people standing by a pterodactyl. Apparently the photo is fake, okay? So don't fall for that one if it comes around. But people say, Brother Hovind, why do you go around and teach about dinosaurs? Well, Satan is using them to turn our own kids away from God. Somebody ought to set the record straight, folks. Christians are confused about where they fit in. I'm just trying to show you the Bible is correct as it's written. They're a great evangelistic tool. Kids love dinosaurs. And we've got to learn to use them to reach people with the gospel. And I think God ought to get the glory for everything He made. If Behemoth is the chief of the ways of God, then God ought to get the glory for what He made. The next chapter, God talks about a creature called Leviathan, another dinosaur. We cover that on one of the green tapes in our topical series about Leviathan. When God was all done talking to Job here, after four chapters, God apparently stopped talking, and Job finally answered the Lord. And he said, I know that thou canst do everything. Hey, did you know God can do everything? And why do we worry about things anyway? And Job said, no thought can be withholden from thee. Job said, I heard of you, but now I understand. I don't think any of us realize who God is. You know, we hear a little bit about Him, but man, He's incredible. Job finally got to understand. He said, I repent in dust and ashes. Lord, I'm sorry. Question. How big is your God? You ever thought about that? Is your God big enough to tell you what kind of clothes to wear? The Bible says women should dress modestly. If you're not in business, don't advertise. Does your God tell you how to cut your hair? Man, when I got saved, I was a lifeguard, long blonde hair. I read the verse, it says it's a shame for a man to have long hair. So I said, okay, God, I'll go cut it. Doesn't matter to me what anybody thinks. I want to know what you care about. I'm going to do it that way. Does God tell you what kind of speech to have? The Bible says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. I know a lot of Christians need to work on cleaning up their mouth. Every idle word you're going to give account thereof in the day of judgment, the Bible says.